difficult time. We just believe that the need to continue this kind of cross-cultural dialogue is just more important than ever. China Institute does this through our School of Chinese Studies. We do it through our gallery, which brings brilliant exhibitions from China. And we do it through programs like this, in which we have Westerners and Chinese exchanging views and sharing information about China with the public. So these kinds of events are more important than ever, and we're so glad that you're here to join us today. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction, and then we'll get on to the program. So first, our wonderful artist, Chen Dongfan, is from China, but he's now living in New York. He's especially known. Hi, Dongfan. He is especially known for large-scale public art projects. And one of his projects, co-presented by New York City DOT and Chinatown Partnership, was in one of those, he painted the entire street of Doyers Street in New York. And it was quite a kind of a statement about identity and about China in Chinatown, and the relationship between East and West. Dongfan currently has a one-man show at the Yeh Gallery, which is at St. John's University in New York. And I believe he also just recently had a show in Beijing, which they will mention as well. We're delighted to have you, Dongfan. Thanks for joining us. And we have Wang Xin is going to have a conversation with Dongfan. She is an art historian and a curator based in New York. Her writing has appeared in many publications, from Eflux Journal to Art Forum, Kaleidoscope, Hyperallergic, and Leap. Wang also works as the Joan Tisch Teaching Fellow at the Whitney Museum of American Art, and she is pursuing her PhD in modern and contemporary art at NYU. Finally, I'm going to actually hand this over in a second to Owen Duffy. Owen is the director of the Yeh Art Gallery at St. John's University. He joined the gallery from the Museum of Arts and Design, where he was the development manager of exhibitions. Owen has also worked as an independent curator and writer. So Owen, why don't I hand it over to you, and you can introduce this, the gallery and the show, and then you can hand it over to Xin and Chen Dongfan.
Great, thank you, Dinda. Really appreciate that. Very kind introduction. And anyway, I want to also thank China Institute for enabling this program. I completely agree with you, Dinda, that I think it's incredibly important, for us to maintain dialogue around important issues related to China and the West. So my name's Owen Duffy. I've been the director of the Yeh Art Gallery, which is housed in actually a Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall on the campus, the Queens campus of St. John's University. And I've been the director of the gallery since April of 2019. So I've just crossed the 1-year threshold. And so for those of you that might not have been there before, the gallery has been in existence since 1994, but the building, which we've always been in, it's really quite a fascinating place. And it's a Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall that was constructed during the Cold War with funds from the Republic of China. And so it was originally built to be an institute for Asian studies, particularly East Asian studies, as a site to really enhance cross-cultural understanding of East Asia and the United States, particularly at a time when, this was very necessary, I think. And what's kind of interesting in a lot of ways is this building opened just a year after Nixon's historic visit to mainland China in 1972. So I kind of found myself, it is a contemporary art gallery. We work with artists from all over, the world, but, I did find myself with this very fascinating building with a very specific cultural history, and being in charge of running a contemporary art gallery within this space. So what we're looking at here is actually a mural that Chen Dongfan, we commissioned him to produce outside of the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall. Which, Wang Xin and Chen will have a really wonderful opportunity to talk about in a little bit. But just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea about the gallery and sort of what we do, is this past fall was actually my first exhibition that I was able to curate. And with that, what I wanted to do was actually create kind create an exhibition in a lot of ways that relates heavily to this history of the building, right? This really intense, diplomatic history, since this was a space in a lot of ways that was really integral to the training of future diplomats. I actually worked with 11 artists from all over the world, many of whom were based in New York, but come from various countries, on a show called Diplomacy. And you're seeing an installation shot from that here. And so this work, for instance, that you're looking at was by an artist, Christopher K. Ho, who's based here in New York and Hong Kong. And it's called Triangle, and it's actually a reference in a lot of ways to the political strategy that Henry Kissinger advanced that actually led to the historic meeting between Nixon and Mao in some ways. And so Christopher Ho here created a hybrid sculpture that relates to that history in different ways, but it's also a combination of a Christmas tree and a pagoda-like structure. So what you're seeing here is kind of a really, wonderful and fascinating synthesis between East and West, which speaks to the larger, context of St. John's University as a Catholic university, but also as one that happens to have this really fascinating building, Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall, on campus. So, quickly before passing it on to Wang Xin, here is a shot from Chen Dongfan's current exhibition, which is still up at St. John's University. It's kind of, the campus is closed to the public at the moment, but it is open by appointment. And while the show might be coming down in August, Dongfan's installation the mural will actually remain up for some time. So what we're gonna hear about, I think, today, in addition to checking in with Dongfan and Wang Xin, it'll be really wonderful to actually get to hear a little bit about how this really fascinating show and the idea of sanctuary very much relates to the really wonderful building that of Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall on campus, really fascinating building with incredible history, and the unique character of St. John's University as well. So, without further ado, I want to hand it over to the artist and to Wang Xin, and thank China Institute for making this program possible. And I hope at some point in the future you're able to stay in touch and make a visit out to see the building, and also Dongfan's mural as well. So thank you so very much. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Wang Xin.
Thank you, Owen, for that contextualization, and welcome everyone. So as I start to share my PowerPoint, I will give you a quick sense of the plan today. So I will briefly talk about the exhibition, and then I will start conversing with the artist almost midway through, and then we'll have a unique opportunity to take a peek inside of the artist's working space right now and take a look at what he has continued to do, actually quite prolifically, during the quarantine period in New York, and looking at the connections of these new body of work and how there are so many connecting threads, from existential reflections to navigating and living among mounting and always kind of transforming geopolitical tensions. And I think, as Owen contextualized so well, setting up the kind of the nature of the institution where Dongfan had his very first kind of institutional solo exhibition. And again, we're looking at this beautiful sort of Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall and the mural leading up to it. But I want to quickly plug in an earlier public project that Dinda actually briefly mentioned. This is the Doyers Street project that Dongfan painted exactly 2 years ago. So it was in the summer of 2008. It was commissioned by the Department of Transportation, and what the artist essentially did was to transform this actually very narrow alley in Chinatown of New York into a beautiful and colorful and very convivial space, and a beautiful kind of asphalt mural. And what I really admired about this piece was that, yes, it was paying homage and it was celebrating the neighborhood, but it wasn't using anything representational. It wasn't focusing on specific imagery. Even though in the title, the artist is talking about the sound of dragon and flowers. And once you understand the title, you realize, oh, we're perhaps standing on the body of a dragon. And yet you can't find any specific anatomical features of the dragon, except it's being made up of interwoven abstract patterns and brushwork that give you a sense that this is being evoked, and we're looking at different glimpses of this creature, if you will, but you can't really see the full body of it. And so there's something incredibly poetic about this work that is also very public facing and in a crucial way politically oriented. And this is also an important sort of setup to give you a sense that prior to the exhibition at the Year Art Gallery, Dongfan has primarily worked in color. And whether in large scale format or in drawings on their intimate scale, these are predominantly paintings and multimedia work that are done in color. But for the San Yat-sen Memorial Hall and the Ye Art Gallery Commission, we wanted to do something different because we all are, in one way or another responding to or feeling mesmerized in one way or another to the historical context of the building and the Cold War history where it came from. And for us as newer immigrants, as people from mainland China living in New York, so Dongfan decided to challenge himself to paint completely in black and white. And I'll move through these images quite quickly to give you a sense of the exhibition. So you're looking at a detailed shot of the San Yat-sen Road in color, which is the commission mural we did outside of the Ye Art Gallery, and a large scale kind of horizontal scroll called Art of the Fugue. And I put these two together because scale-wise, they're almost commensurate. But you can see that the mood and the way that the artist works with black and white is very different from this polychromatic work. And this is another detailed shot, which we will unpack a bit later. One work I'll pick out specifically is the hanging scroll to the right of the trail that you're looking at. It's called The Stone Picking God. And when we were working through the checklist of the show, and I asked Dongfan, are you thinking about the Greek mythology where this Greek god keeps pushing the stone uphill only to be punished to return to the foot of the hill to start the process again? And to which he replied, well, I'm also thinking about Chinese mythology where we have just cosmic level battles where people hurtling mountains at one another. And that kind of massive destructive forces led to the legend of Nuwa, which was the Chinese goddess who created men, to kind of piece together the sky again and start life again. So there's a lot of metaphors and allegories to these ancient tales that also, I think, throughout the duration of the exhibition, since they opened in late January, started to accumulate new resonance. And these are two more images, which I think gives you a nice contrast of how the artists sometimes work with recognizable imagery, but still not a clear or fixed narrative. And on the right, a spontaneous kind of quasi-abstract work. And this one was funny because, as you can see, there are some fingerprints, right? I was told that Dongfan started with a very different composition at one point, kicked over his bucket of paint, and then decided just to use his finger to finish the composition now that it's already going in a different direction. And you can also see that this is an image that was mounted against a very colorful background. So this is actually a glimpse of the artist's Long Island City studio that is painted from floor to ceiling. And we will have more glimpses of that. And so a little bit more about the exhibition itself. So here you're actually looking at, on the right, what the exhibition looks like when you enter it. And the blackboard is a work that's called The Sanctuary Club, where the artist envisions visitors to leave their own marks. And in the middle of that, he created a reflective painting, and you can see the artist holding it in the image on the left and me taking a selfie through the reflection, which I think gives you a sense of how that very mechanism of self-reflection and then leaving your mark and your kind of gestural doodles on the wall. And this became a really popular feature of the show, as you can see. By the time we actually staged a performance, a collaborative performance between Dongfan and the Shanghai Restoration Project, electronic music duo based in Brooklyn. It's already been fully covered by the visitors. And we'll talk about the performance in a moment as well, but this gives you a sense of the participatory nature of this exhibition that also, I think, has a certain connection to how Dongfan spontaneously creates imagery. And this is just an image from the performance where you can see people are adding their own gestures after Dongfan had already smeared and smudged what markings that had already existed up to this point. And I think from here, I will actually loop Dongfan in, because when we were conceiving of this talk, that was way before everything closed down, and we thought we would have a sit-down conversation. And the topic that was on our mind was mythology, because you can see in a lot of Dongfan's work, he evokes mythological tales, mythological creatures, but done them, and they're kind of evoked in a way that has a newfound relevancy rather than a trite or cliched evocation of Chineseness. And what you're looking at here are two painting enamel on transparencies that we actually mounted in the exhibition on the ceilings where there are light fixtures. So as you can imagine, the white part are actually the transparent bits where light would come through. And so it's a really a kind of ad hoc lighthouse, light box installation where we have ominous and again, rather loaded imagery. So just to give you a brief sense, the imagery you're looking at on the left is a three-legged crow. And according to Chinese legend, three-legged crows represent the sun when they're resting. And there was a particular tale of the 9 sons and Hou Yi, who is a heroic warrior who was tasked to punish the sons who decided to all come out at once. So as you can imagine, when there's 9 suns in the sky, it created absolute disaster for all life on Earth. So Hou Yi had to shoot them down one by one until the last one got the memo and started to behave. But when they die and fell to the earth, they resume the form of the three-legged crow. And so this is a rather, I think, obscure setup, I think, for those who are not already familiar with the story. And so maybe I can loop Dongfan in now and have him talk about why he wanted to evoke this particular tale and mythological references in general. 所以Dongfan就是我不知道你没有跟我前面说的这些，反正就是我们从这章开始讲，就大概讲一下为什么你创作这个中国神话练习系列，然后就是对这个三条腿的乌鸦，然后还有后羿，还有后的神，就是你为什么觉得神话在你的创作当中是有效用的，还有是有关联的？And I will translate for Dongfan. Yeah.
谢谢王鑫，大家好，我是认为就是神话是包含着美好的愿望，所以说我觉得就是在这次庇护所的展览之中，使用中国古代传统神话，我觉得是非常好的一个方式，尤其是当我就是为什么会想到用后羿射日，是因为我会联想到在做就是孙中山的，就是研究的时候会就会想到我生活之中关于这些记忆是哪里的。我有一首非常喜欢的歌是齐秦的，是台湾歌手齐秦的，叫《9个太阳》，讲的就是后羿射日的故事。然后所以说就顺理成章的就开始使用这个神话开始作为切入点，然后慢慢的进入。
Okay, 那我先翻译一下。So for Dongfan, he was explaining how mythology, especially Chinese mythologies, always are for him connected to beautiful aspirations and a sense of hopefulness. So that's why he was thinking about these as he was preparing for the Sanctuary exhibition. And also in particular thinking about Sang Yesan himself while he was doing research on this incredible historical figure. and mixing in his love for Taiwanese pop music, in particular one from Qi, who had a song called Nine Suns, which evokes that very story that we just told.
对，就是这样子的。
Oh, okay, so that's it, and I think we still have a lot of images, so I think we can keep going, right? Unless you have something to add here. And I mentioned that there's this exhibition just went through a sort of roller coaster for all of the creators, because I actually spent Lunar New Year in China, and because of the exhibition's opening date, I was able to come just before the pandemic got really widespread and everything became extremely locked down in China. And when I came back, there was a moment that it felt quite surreal, because life for a brief moment, at least throughout February, was still carrying on as normal. Our exhibition opened, we had our performance. But at the same time, I noticed that the media was reporting heavily on the 2 hospitals that was built in Wuhan, the epidemic center of COVID-19, and really fetishizing the sort of infrastructural speed of the building of the 2 hospitals. And they're normally just reported by the kind of Romanization, Lei Shenshan, Huo Shenshan hospitals. But for anyone who understands Chinese, these hospitals were named after the fire god mountain and the thunder god mountain. Both has kind of cosmic references to elements that could vanquish disease. So for me, this was incredibly fascinating, because you can see that the sort of operative cultural logic of the mythology, even in a moment of pandemic response and infrastructural construction. And just to wrap up about the introduction or an overview of the exhibition, we actually have a special clip created by the musicians Xin Wang and Dave Liang of the Shanghai Restoration Project, where you will have a sense both of the exhibition itself, how it feels like to walk through the installation, as well as the kind of spontaneous collaborations between Dongfan and the musicians, both in his Long Island City studio and at the Yar Gallery space. So it's only 1 minute long. So that was actually a trailer the musicians made for our performance. Going to the next slide. So here's an aerial view of actually where Dongfan is sitting currently. And so maybe we can take this opportunity to allow Dongfan to give us a quick overview of the studio space. And then we can start to look at the 3 series of works that he has continued to do during quarantine.
OK， 大家分享一下，这是转过来吧，这是我平常在家里画画的地方。
So this is the corner where he creates.
我称这里为隐秘的角落。
So he calls it my hidden spot.
对，然后墙上是我画的关于2020年 Stay Home 的海报。
So on the wall is the series called Stay Home. They started off as a series of posters for the 2020 quarantine period.
然后每天都会在这个桌子前画画，这个桌子已经画成黑色了。
So he paints every day on this table. It has turned dark with the layers of paint.
对，这是我画的最新的系列，关于小说的系列。
So this is another series that has to do with novels and a kind of experimental way of writing. Dongfan, Dinda wants to know about your life under quarantine. And can you maybe reflect on the first few months of your own experience being locked down at home? What were some of the difficulties? 就是说你刚开始 quarantine 的时候，在家的状态，还有遇到的一些困难或者挣扎是什么？
就是刚刚开始疫情期间的时候，我的脚其实是受伤的，然后所以说每天只能躺在这里，所以说有2个月的时间，然后每天只能画画有1个小时的时间。 所以说，从一个很安静的状态开始的，
So Dongfan was saying that at the beginning of the quarantine, he accidentally broke his foot. So he was very limited in that capacity. And so he started to paint an hour every day. So he started off actually in a very solitary and quiet.
对，但是就是每天。 因为每天的心情都会不一样，因为我们家里人，我太太还有孩子一起，然后居家隔离，然后整个就每天通过社交媒体啊，通过新闻来了解外面的世界，所以每天有很多的情绪，所以说，我就用写信的方式，然后把它记录下来，然后就是我称这个系列作品叫《被遗忘的信件》。
So then Dongfan continued to say that he went through a lot of emotions during each single day of the quarantine as he stays home with his wife and his kid. There's just through exposure to social media, it creates emotional roller coasters. And so a lot of that prompted him to respond in a letter format, and that led to his Forgotten Letter series.
因为无论环境怎么样，就是我们都要生活都要继续嘛。然后像我们做创作的也要克服各种困难做创作，所以在家里嘛就没有像工作室有那么多的，就是颜料或笔，所以就只能画很小的画，然后所以说就有什么条件就。 做什么样的创作，但是不妨碍，我去，就是我自己说叫画地为牢，也能够任意驰骋。
So he was saying that, but life has to continue, and as creators, you have to keep finding ways to keep creating. And working from home is very different because he could make use of, he could actually work on much larger formats and spread out. But at home, he has to be limited in much smaller sizes and formats. And he jokingly called it, he imprisoned himself by drawing this small square, but you have a sense of freedom within it.
对，我形容画信的这个过程是一个很寂静诗意的一种状态，所以说是一个很安静的状态。 但是随着这个疫情它没有好转，然后包括慢慢的纽约城市开始，就是开始重新开放，然后我也能够走路，然后之后走在城市里就会慢慢的会体会到这个天翻地覆的变化，然后这种时候你就无法保持一种安静的状态，所以好多这种情绪会进来，就是我是觉得像是一语成真一样，就突然就会意识到。 就是庇护所的重要，就突然家就成了我们大家所有人的庇护所，然后创作就成了我的就是艺术家的一个庇护所。
So Dongfan was saying that in the beginning, it was quite poetic and it was very quiet because he was basically in his apartment the whole time. But as his foot recovered and he was able to walk outside, which I think was already 2 months into the quarantine, he was able to see and experience firsthand what was going on in the streets and kind of visually encounter the transformations that took place during this long period of time where he was homebound. And it broke the sense of serenity and kind of poetic quietness for him, and kind of new revelations and emotions kicked in that made him, I think, going back to the importance of the very notion of sanctuary, which here means both his apartment and creating as a sanctuary for practitioners and for creatives. Yeah.
然后我就开始创作小说系列，然后小说的作品有情绪就比较复杂，抽象和具象相互之间的交错，包括文字跟作品之间的关系，变得就比较复杂。所以说小说系列就是比较就是属于居家隔离第3个月开始，第3个月、第4个月的时候开始创作这个系列。
So the second project that he started creating was called novels or fictions. And there is a kind of interconnection between the text and the image, as well as between concrete and abstract images. And I'm just inserting something here. We'll take a look at these later on because they're also part of the slideshow. But essentially, this was a response, I think, starting the 3rd month of his quarantine to his direct experiences.
然后就是还有后面墙面上的是第3个系列，叫海报系列，然后是关于2020的。最早的开始的时候是关于 stay home， 就是在家里的一个。就是stay home 的一个海报，到后面的时候我就变成了一个就关于今年的一些就是关于今年的一些海报，然后有些是来自于关于社交网络上，有些来自于艺术史，有些来自于自己心里的感受，然后我希望用这种方式，然后用海报的方式来记录我们所经历过的2020。
So the last series, which you can actually get kind of a quick, distant look at behind his back, is called Posters. It started as kind of a playful take on the didactic poster to make sure that people stayed home. And then it transformed into sort of documentation of sorts of lived experiences in 2020, but they all work under the kind of poster theme. Yeah.
对，然后现在嘛，生活还在继续调整，然后看到城市慢慢的变化，慢慢的变好，然后但是现在依然还是不能够恢复到以前正常的生活嘛，所以说就是心理的压力还是比较大，但是我希望会越来越好。
So as time goes on and he witnessed the city slowly resuming and becoming slightly better, the artist realizes that it's still a long way from becoming or returning to the normalcy before the quarantine and the pandemic. So he has certain struggles and along those lines, but remains hopeful for what's to come. So 东帆，你要不要讲一下你背后有一张，就是我们其实可以看得很清楚，对，就最左边这一张或者中间这一张，就我们能看清楚都可以。So I'm now asking Dongfan to maybe just talk about one of these works now that we actually have it behind him, and then this will really feel like a studio visit collectively with him.
OK， 这个作品，是我在刷 ins 的时候看到了 叫乌尔斯菲舍尔的雕塑，然后蜡烛的雕塑，然后特别有强烈的感受，然后脑子里会突然闪现一条蛇，就是人面蛇身的一个形象。这个人面蛇身在中国古代神话里面是关于女娲的，但是我觉得蛇缠绕在身上的时候，又有一种寓意，就是我们说你不知道是福还是祸的状态，就是一个燃烧的一个蜡烛的人，然后同时有一个这样的意象缠绕着，所以说我就把这个意象抓到，然后马上把它迅速画下来，然后我觉得这个是一个非常好的一个，就是像是一个跟艺术家互动的一个作品。
所以你还是把镜头定在这上面 ，right? Okay. So Dongfan was explaining how this image came into being. He was scrolling on Instagram, like so many of us do, maybe too much every day, and he came across one of these wax sculptures by Urs Fischer. Don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but this artist who has done a lot of large-scale melting sculptures using wax, or sculptures capable of being melted away. And so this is again my explanation. So often these are presented as they're melting in the exhibition space until it completely disappears. And seeing this Instagram image of Urs Fischer's work reminded Dongfan of a certain image also of snakes. So you see this candle figure in the center, and he was also reminded of being surrounded and shrouded by a snake, or more specifically, a creature with a human head and snake body, which in Chinese mythology is usually the iconography for Nuwa, the creator of all humans, and also the goddess who was able to recover and mend the sky from falling to the ground. And so there is this sense of entanglement from the waxed figure and the snake that surrounds it. And that's where this image came from. And it reflects a certain psychological and mental state.
这里还有另外一张关于雕塑艺术家的作品，这张是安东尼·格姆雷的一个雕塑，然后我把它放到了宇宙里，然后我觉得漂浮在宇宙里的一个雕塑。但是我给我太太看，我太太说这个特别像是一个木乃伊。
你这也是 Instagram 上面看到的吗？
这个是对，因为我发现每天刷社交媒体成了一个生活中必不可少的一个活动。
Okay, so this is another image that Dongfan has from the poster series. And again, the inspiration came from Instagram, that he acknowledged as inseparable part of our lives, our daily lives now. And this is inspired by another artist's work, Anthony Gormley. I think this is probably a familiar sculptor to a lot of us. And he imagined putting one of his quasi-figural sculptures as it suspends and floats in space. So all of these dots in the background represent, you know, a cosmic background. But when he showed it to his wife, Ina, Ina thought that this looks like a mummy, like an Egyptian mummy.
还有一张就是刚才王鑫讲过的那个三条腿的乌鸦，然后这个我把它，我不知道大家有没有印象，就是伍德斯托克有一个著名的海报，就是有一只鸽子停在一个吉他的上面，是关于和平的、爱与和平的一个象征。然后我觉得这个是在疫情居家隔离的期间，然后我觉得三条腿的鸟就像太阳一样，这时候特别希望能够去到户外，离开家。所以说有时候这 Stay Home 的海报其实一个另外的一个愿望。这个就是我把一个和平鸽跟三条腿中国神话乌鸦做了一个结合。
So this is another image from the poster series where the artist went from this imagery or this iconography of the three-legged crow that we discussed earlier, and also thinking about a famous Woodstock poster where there's a dove, a white dove, perched on a guitar as a sort of metaphor for peace and for love. And Dongfan decided to fuse these two otherwise rather contradictory images together, the crow and the dove, make it three-legged, but taking on a more maybe positive and hopeful meaning. And the artist is also acknowledging the ironic nature of this work because he was, because the entire series was thematized as stay home, but that image clearly represents a wish to fly away and have some regained freedom. And now he's penning the wall to give us more looks at sort of the body of work collectively. 我发现我们现在讲一下你在北京的展览吧。
行 ，OK， 我下来。
So just going back to the slideshow, where we actually have a lot of these images in PowerPoint as well. So in the Q&A session, which will start in about 5 minutes, you can feel free to ask the artist and we can revisit some of them. But miraculously, sorry, this is another kind of artist book series that the artist carried out throughout 2019, where he committed himself to painting one large-scale artist book per week. And this is one of those books that features his collaboration with the Shanghai Restoration Project. Miraculously, Dongfan was able to have an exhibition that opened in Beijing. It's about to close, but I think it started June 27th, and it basically offers a sort of comprehensive view of the Forgotten Letter series, which was the first series he started doing during quarantine. This is the installation view, and here you have some mounted looks, and even in this format I think you can get a sense of the figural beast-like mythological characters. And here's the large-scale poster at Platform China, and on the right, you know, actual people in an art space, which we haven't experienced in a very long time, all masked. So 东范，你要不要讲一下，就是你参加这个展览的过程，还有会然后再讲一下这个。
因为这个，我觉得这个特别的有缘，然后也特别的，就是一波三折吧。然后这次在上海，在那个北京站台中国展出，被遗忘的信件，我觉得非常的幸运。一个呢是在疫情期间如果能有展览，我觉得是一个非常感恩的事情。再一个呢，因为这个我觉得被遗忘信件是要被寄出的，然后但是就是这些信件寄往北京的过程之中，这时候北京的疫情第二次爆发，然后就很担心这个展览就是开幕能不能顺利，然后所以说就是这些信件最后跟大家能够见面，我觉得是一个非常幸运的一个事情。
Okay, so looking back on kind of the realization of this exhibition, Dongfan was telling us how troublesome the process was, but at the same time how grateful he felt about actually being able to mount this exhibition. Because they're titled Forgotten Letters, the artist thought they should be mailed to a recipient, that they should be sent in a physical format. But when they were being shipped to Beijing, it just so happened to coincide with the second wave of the pandemic over there. So there were concerns of the shipment not clearing and not being able to even have an exhibition. But in the end, against all odds, it still was able to open to the public. So he felt incredibly grateful to have an exhibition during quarantine.
因为现在在一个这样的时代，写信是一件很古老的事情，但是我觉得就是用信件的方式把美好的祝福然后发送出去，是一件就是非常浪漫的、有诗意的事情。所以是说，我觉得用80封信，然后在北京展出，然后我在纽约不能回去，但是我能够感受到，就是能够呼应到这份就是回信的这种感受。我觉得这个还是给予我很多的力量。
So Dongfan was saying that he considers letter writing to be a sort of dated or ancient practice in a lot of people's mind nowadays, but he has a certain attachment to it as a very romantic practice. And so to have the forgotten letters being mounted in Beijing and have people actually viewing them or receiving them in this manner completes the process, and that was deeply touching for him.
对，我叫它被遗忘的信件。我觉得如果是没有被遗忘的话，那就是，就是怎么说呢？然后没有被遗忘，应该是没有被遗忘的信件。
So he feels like even though they were titled forgotten letters, because of they arrived at their recipients,
因为有牵挂嘛。
unforgotten letters then. Yeah.
So, Xin, do you want to show a couple more slides and then open it up to questions? Or
Yeah.
I have one quick question about the letters, if I may, just to ask, is each of those images supposed to represent a letter? Is that the point? Or
就是东方听到问，就是这个被遗忘的信件系列，是不是每一张都代表一封信？
对，是的，每一封信都很独特，因为我每天只画一封信。所以每天的信件它会包含着我的一些想法，然后我觉得包含了很多的东西在里面。
So Dongfan was explaining that yes, indeed, each image. So we're looking at some of these images now from Forgotten Letter series. Each one represents a letter, and he writes one letter each day. So that kind of encapsulates what he feels or experiences on that particular day.
great. So we'll turn to questions in a sec, but I wanted to say, I see there are a couple questions that have been typed into the Q&A box, but if you want to ask a question, you can also raise your hand. There's a button on the bottom which says raise hand, and you can raise your hand and I will see that and I can call on you, and you can just go ahead and ask your question. Shall I jump in with a question, or do you want to keep scrolling through some images?
No, I think we're good. We have a lot of images that we can jump to when the question arises.
Wonderful. Okay, so I do see a question from Laura Burton, who is asking, what do you want to create? This is for Dongfan. What do you want to create once you can get back to the large studio?
就是东方，如果你能回到就是你的工作室的时候，你会想做什么样的创作？
我觉得还是想要跟音乐有关的创作，因为我觉得这跟纯粹的绘画和纯粹的精神有关系。然后我觉得这也是我一直就是疫情期间被打断的创作。
So Dongfan would like to resume his series that has to do with music, because it represents a certain dimension of spirituality, and as you can see in our previous slides, it's a continued mode of inspiration for his practice, and it's also something that got interrupted with the quarantine.
And
So
what is the nature of that music project? Can you talk a little bit about that?
这可不可以讲一讲这个跟音乐有关的创作具体是什么样的？
就是刚才在王鑫和欧文展示的画廊的，就是庇护所展览上，有一幅大的卷轴的画，那是关于巴赫的音乐的一个主题的创作。然后巴赫是我很喜欢的，就是艺术家。然后当我就是心情不能平复的时候，我都会听巴赫。然后在室外的就是壁画，我是听贝多芬的音乐在进行创作，因为我觉得我这时候需要把自己所有的这种激情调动起来的时候，我觉得贝多芬是一个很好的起搏器，它能够给予我这种的激情和力量。
So Dongfan was actually talking about this particular pair of works in relation to music. So the one, this large-scale scroll format painting called Art of the Fugue, was a direct reference to Bach, whose music brings him a sense of serenity and calmness and order when he's creating. And that was the energy he was responding to when creating this work. Whereas the mural outside, he said he was listening to Beethoven because he needed that spike of energy that sustains something much, much more maybe energetic.
而且在现场的时候，我跟上海复兴方案是非常优秀的音乐家，我跟他们合作的时候是即兴的音乐和即兴的创作， 在工作室和在现场都有合作。我觉得在捕捉这个就是精神的纯粹的瞬间的时候，我觉得需要这样的大量的实践。我喜欢跟优秀的艺术家一起，然后去探索创作。
So Dongfan was saying that he loves working, creating, and exploring together with other brilliant artists. And here he's talking specifically about the Shanghai Restoration Project artists who are wonderful musicians and visual artists of their own right. And when he was staging these spontaneous performances, both in the studio and at the Yara Gallery during the run of Sanctuary, it requires actually a lot of practice to be able to calibrate and to be able to not synchronize, but being able to draw from that evolving energy and kind of moments of kind of spiritual resonance. And that took practice for him. So that's something that's missing when people are isolated and quarantined. Yeah.
So that actually leads into one of the next questions. But first, I just wanted to mention, so wonderful that you mentioned Beethoven, because we have been doing a series. We had one yesterday, a conversation about the history of Beethoven in China. It's Beethoven's 150th birthday, I guess, or his. And next week on Tuesday, we're going to have a second program like this, which is going to show a clip of a new documentary about the Philadelphia Orchestra and its journey in China starting in 1973 and the story of Beethoven's music in China. So please tune into that. But the next question is kind of related to what you just were talking about, because you were talking about practicing and actually, kind of liking that experience of working with other artists together. And we've got a question from KK, which says, how does your daily art making process work? Do you have a plan for what to make each day, or is the process totally spontaneous?
所以就是翻译一下这个问题。前面丁达讲了一下，就是他觉得你提到贝多芬这个事儿特别巧，因为 China Institute 这2周也在做一些跟贝多芬在中国有关的项目。然后就接下来这个问题是，一个观众叫 KK， 然后他的问题就是说，你每天的这个创作过程就是你的具体的创作过程是怎么样的？是有一个计划呢，还是就每天定一个计划，还是完全的随机？
我是尽量每天都会坐在桌子前去画画，但是有时候如果状态不好的话，我就不会画。这跟我每天健身是一样的，有时候会比较懒惰一点。然后我觉得就像一个生活的状态一样，我觉得健身、画画、吃饭，偶尔出去散步，然后跟太太一起看电影，然后所以说我在安排一种就是疫情期间的这种生活规律，所以创作就变成了一个很日常的这种状态。
So he has created a sort of routine that maintains a sense of regularity during quarantine life. And he would sit in front of a table to try to create a painting every day, but sometimes it just can't happen. And he was saying that was the same way with exercising, where you sometimes feel lazy. But for him, this has become a sort of daily routine where you just go and sit there and see if something comes out. Just the same way you would watch TV shows with his wife and go for a walk from time to time. It has been incorporated into a daily routine rather than a kind of separation between life and work. Yeah.
So if I may, I'm going to jump in and ask a kind of question, ask Dongfan to think a little bit about this kind of geopolitical moment that we're all living through and the rising tensions between the United States and China. Since your stuff is being shown now in New York and many of your audience members are Americans, when they look at your work as a Chinese artist, maybe you don't want to be viewed as a Chinese artist versus just an artist, but as a Chinese artist, what do you hope that Americans will take away from that?
所以这个问题是和怎么说呢，当下的地缘政治有关系。所以就是他丁的想问的就是说，你在创作的时候，或者说你觉得你的创作 会给美国的观众有什么样的，就是他们会留下什么，或者你希望会给他们留下什么样的感受或者说印象？因为或者说你会不会觉得在看你作品的时候，仅仅把你当做一个中国艺术家？
我觉得这个跟哪一国的艺术家都没有关系。然后我觉得就像我们在讨论神话是一样的，其实无论是哪个国家的神话，其实都是一种很朴素的一种愿望，所以说它形成神话故事。所以说我是觉得像我的创作，其实我也就是我是觉得我们在这种大环境下是受影响，我说我们是受影响的普通人。然后我用创作的方式来做表达，然后我还有一种就是最强烈的愿望，就是爱与和平嘛，希望世界能够恢复到正常的这种状态。我觉得这是应该我希望传递的。
So Dongfan doesn't feel that there necessarily will be too much distinction which cultural background or which country you comes from or which interpretive framework nationality wise should be imposed when you look at his work, because he felt that there's lots of connections simply from individual experiences navigating something that's larger than our ability to make sense of sometimes, and that's in a way analogous to comparative mythologies. When you look at mythological tales from different countries, they all have the same sort of sincere and humble origins, and they pray to more or less the same things. And that's a sort of empathetic link that he hopes gets evoked when people look at his work. And ultimately it's about love and peace and having life hopefully resuming soon.
Wonderful. Xin, do you have any other questions, any other big questions you want to ask? We just have a couple more minutes. We've got, 3 to 5 more minutes.
Do we want someone to raise their hand or?
I don't see any hands raised. I had some questions from the audience, but I don't see raised hands.
The dog wants to ask a question.
Yes, exactly. I apologize for that.
I think we can take a look at more images actually.
Sure. Yeah.
So that we get the full sense of a studio visit.
There is one other question as we look through the images. Someone's asking, how do you construct your images? Do you use reference pictures? I guess you said that some of them you've been inspired by some images from Instagram, but that's another question. Are there any reference pictures that you use?
所以另外一个问题就是说，你具体就是这些图像是怎么样整合出来的？因为你前面提到就是说刷 Instagram。
就是有时候不全，因为不全是来自于社交网络，就是我给自己定了一个就是很简单的规则，就是当我坐在桌子前的时候，清空自己的脑袋，然后面对一张纸，然后就是这时候我可能听音乐，也可能刷手机，也可能在看书，然后这时候脑子里出现一个简单的想法的时候，我不去否定它，我就去肯定它，去画。就比如说我想，就有一个脑子里蹦出来一个想法，就一个人。然后站在水里，然后就这么一个简单的想法，然后我就不用去否定它，开始画。我觉得绘画能够把这个意象带到一个不一样的高度去，因为你用什么颜色，然后这个人的姿势是什么样的，然后使这张画就开始有了灵魂，然后有了它的所指的东西。所以说，我觉得最开始的时候是用一种这样的方式做创作，后来的时候就开始使用，就是比如小说系列。有了这个画了图像之后，我会根据这个图像去得到一个文字，这文字怎么来的？我会用电脑用人工智能取名字的地方会得到关键词，然后再用这个关键词去找这个有没有这个历史上有歌曲或书，或者是有什么样的一句话跟它是对应的，然后再用谷歌翻译把它翻译成中文，然后再找到对应的这种点。然后这个文字跟绘画也形成了一种关系，然后这时候小说系列我不会停留在这一步，我才会根据这句话和这张和原来画的这张画，这张画和这个文字产生这种情绪，然后我就 再画了一张抽象的画，然后这时候才算一张完整的作品。所以说，我觉得疫情期间给自己设定一些规则，这样的话就会出现很多有意思的这种创作。
So basically, the artist would set up some parameters, but not concrete references. And he talked about before starting each painting or each work, before anything gets put down, he clears his mind and just wait for whatever emerges. And of course, as he pulls these images out onto the paper, something that's, as you can imagine, referential or spontaneous thought will emerge to create an image. But it's a very dynamic process. And to give us an example, he actually just elaborated a little bit on the novel or the fiction series, which we're looking at an example of right now. So he starts with an image on the left and then identifies a title for the work based on the mood of the image and the current kind of creative state that he was in. The way he identifies the titles for these images makes use of random Google search and also artificial intelligence gadgets that can churn out certain phrases or keywords, which he then would plug into Google search to find the most approximate correspondence to an existing passage or a lyrics or a title of a song. And so the image on the right you're looking at is initially blank. So it's just, I looked at, he showed me some of his, in progress images in which the page on the right is still in a blank form, but with the title printed. And once he has the title, which he then translated using Google Translate, and the image, which is more, I guess, figural or concrete on the left, he would then combine the two to create a more abstract image on the right that overlays with the print-out title of the work.
对，对于我来说，这个是
Yeah.
也对于我来说，就是在 research 的过程中是获取知识的一种方式，因为会打开很多你不了解的一些就是相关的知识，比如说历史啊，或者是音乐然后我就会大量的去做这个 research， 所以说就是在网络上用这种方式来获取信息。
And so this process of randomly generating searches and researching on the phrases that he was able to get became a process of acquiring new knowledge and expanding his own knowledge about be it a piece of music or historical information. And so that has become a rewarding process too in creating the series.
Wow, it turns out to have been a very interesting question, complicated. We're basically up to time, but I did want to ask one last question if I could, because Dongfan, you talk about love and peace, and the title for your exhibition is Sanctuary, and yet when I look at these images, like this image on the left, I don't think of peace when I look at that. It seems violent, and there's a certain energy of kind of anger or whatever in there. So I wonder if you can talk about that, the sort of contrast between what's in your mind, and then there seems to be, I don't know if it's a reflection of your mood, but there certainly seems to be some disruption in your work.
所以听到这个问题就是说，因为你前面提到你的创作很多是跟爱与和平有关的嘛，但是他说他在看到很多你创作图像，包括就是这一张左边的这个图像，其实它是很暴力的，然后有一些地方比较扭曲的图示，所以想问一下这个冲突你怎么去解释？
我觉得他感受是对的，因为这个系列跟前面的信件的系列是一个，我觉得像阴阳面一样是对立的。比如说信件它充满着美好的祝福，它是安静的，然后这个小说系列它是激烈的，充满着冲突和暴力。我觉得这放在一整体，这都是它的真相的全部。我觉得是我们 从疫情居家隔离到现在，就慢慢的逐渐开放，无论外面的世界的变化和局势的变化，就是这都是我们所面临的生活。然后我觉得从开始希望会慢慢变好，到开始接受这个世界的真正的面貌，我觉得这种复杂的情绪都会在画面上有所体现。我觉得就是像是在揭示真相的一个过程。
So Dongfan's response essentially acknowledges that you were quite apt in describing this contrast and in perceiving this conflict. And for him, they are sort of paired up in this way. So with Forgotten Letters, it came from a serene place, and he wants things to be static and poetic and sort of meditated. But then the fiction series clearly speaks to the more violent energy that he was sensing and witnessing. But both, I think, collectively tell the truth of that lived experience.
Wow, go ahead, sorry, keep going.
就是我在小说系列里头，其中有一篇是我搜索到一首歌，是1980几年的歌，讲的是叫我不会讲语言，刚才给大家看到过，其实讲的就是高更的故事。然后高更从一个文明的世界来到了一个热带的小岛，然后他不会讲当地人的语言，但是他可以去触摸，可以去感受。我觉得现在疫情期间，就是在纽约疫情居家隔离的期间，我觉得我特别能够理解这种感受。
We don't have that image, but so Dongfan gave us another example from the fiction series. Oh, maybe he's going to show us. Oh, very cool. So I'm going to stop sharing so that you guys can...
I don't speak the language.
So this is a work still in progress where the inspiration came from this phrase, I don't speak the language, and it came from an anecdote with Gauguin, who when he first went to the Tahiti's didn't really know the language. So many of his works were a direct kind of sensory response. And he felt that during quarantine, he could relate to that sense of at loss with language. And so that became a component in this work. But as you can see, the page was still blank. So it's waiting to be painted over in the third step of the work. Yeah.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing how you fill that page. And I want to thank you so much. Wang Xin, you've done an amazing job of moderating and translating and curating, and thank you so much. Owen, I want to congratulate you on the incredible exhibition at Yale Gallery. I hope that people might be able to make an appointment and come and see some of that before it goes down in August. And especially Chen Dongfan, you are so brilliant and your thinking is so complicated, from peace and love to violence and disruption. And we are very grateful to you for your work and for sharing your thinking with us today. So thank you all so much. And I want to encourage people to please become members of China Institute, because it's your membership that supports us. You'll get great discounts on things, but it supports us and allows us to bring brilliant speakers like these three people you see on your screen. So please become members, and we look forward to seeing you next time. But thank you so much for joining, and thank you to our three wonderful speakers.
Thank you, Dinda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.